Welcome, everyone. Yes, we are back for a second round of the live roster reduction show. We'll see if anybody pops in here, kind of coming into this as a surprise. We expected Nick and I. Well, Nick didn't expect. I expected that when we started the reaction to the roster reduction to 53 players for this year, and Nick's here. I'm assuming he's ready to go. No, one more minute. So Nick's coming in super early, but he's ready to roll. I expected, Nick did not, that if we started at like 3, we'd have a little time to talk about the moves already made earlier in the day, and then like maybe 3:45, 4 o'clock at the latest. Chiefs would roll out the roster, or at least we'd get it from the NFL. No, and pretty much just thought about going from 3 to 5. Roster came out at 5:15, and so if you listen to like the last 2 minutes of the 3 o'clock live stream, you do get the 53 player roster. But we had to take a break. So I have now been fortified by a peanut butter sandwich and some Reese's peanut butter pretzels, along with some Milo's iced tea. So once again, sponsors, if you're listening, that's why you need to sponsor the show. We're ready to go for really, truly breaking down the 53 player roster for real promise this time. And I can probably just go ahead and take care of some of the easy stuff. And what I'll probably do here is I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach this. I think I'm just going to bring up the super easy, quick, and fun webpage from ChiefsDigest.com. Unless Nick has a look on his face like he's got a better solution. But let's see if I can just share my screen. I know I can. Sometimes it's just a matter of me remembering to use the technology in the right way. And the fact that I have like 25 different tabs open that I have to then choose from for choosing the correct one. But if we can do this, then not only will you be able to see, in theory, the 53 player roster, but you'll also be able to see the 41 is the mic podcast that you should also be listening to. So if you aren't a subscriber to the 41 is the mic podcast, that is a great reminder to go over and check it out. And of course, once again, if you're not a subscriber to Chiefs Digest here on YouTube, it's a great time to do that as well. But looking at the roster, and we've got all the moves up, and I'll just need to remember when I need to scroll in the right place. But quarterback we can take care of before even Nick comes in here, because there's no really discussion to make about the quarterback spot. Patrick Mahomes, Carson Wentz are your two. Chris Oladokun more than likely will be the backup if he clears waivers and gets to the practice squad. Always that outside chance that maybe the Chiefs will sign somebody else, but I think it'll be Oladokun. And Nick is here in the house. So
greetings, Matt.
We got the band ready for real.
I still got that coffee coursing through my veins, Matt. So I am ready to talk, man.
Yeah, if you missed the 3 o'clock version, Nick is full of sport coffee. So
it's something special about it.
Strap yourselves in.
Something special about it, dude. It amps me up. I don't know what it is, but you saw during the podcast, the show, it just went and then pow.
I mean, I was ready. You did throw out the idea that maybe the Chiefs should, look at Jason Bean or something like that as a third quarterback on the practice squad. But I'm still Team Oladokun for life.
I never said you didn't have to be. I'm just saying, like, he intrigues me in what Andy Reid could do with him.
There's nothing wrong with intriguing. So,
see, there you go. Maybe Chris wants to start a new journey for all we know. I hope not, but I mean, if he does, then there are options.
There are always options. And we are going to take your questions too. So I will try to, especially if we come up with, we got some questions that correspond with the group that we are talking about at the time. We'll do that. And I'm going to try and not, drag this out, Nick. I mean, hopefully just an hour version. I don't even know if you can stick around for the whole hour, but
no, not the whole hour, but I mean,
we'll see if we can.
I promise my niece is something that I need to for school tomorrow. So
Uncle Nick. That is awesome.
I gotta go do that. So you get me till 7:40 at the latest. I told him
that is more than any of us could possibly hope for. So
that's what you get. So I mean, that's where just remember, Matt, like they said on that Brady Bunch movie, wherever you go, There you are.
There you go. That's right. That's right, Des. We're both back here. So, running back. Also, no real surprises here, Nick. Isaiah Pacheco, Carson Steele, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah.
Couple of practice squad candidates for you two that got waived today.
Yeah. So I put out the practice squad ones. I mean, I put out everybody that I think is worthy of being developed, but I don't think, because obviously I put out 22 names that have been a part of the training camp thing. It doesn't mean that all of them are going to be a part of it, but I could see realistically the Chiefs wanting to continue to invest in a handful of them. So, I mean, like you said, Chris Oladukin is one. Running back wise, Derrick Prince, Louis Rees-Zammit, Bailey, and I have them in a specific order where I think kind of, you go 1, 2, 3, 4 type of thing. Then I got Justin Ross, Nico Remigio, Montrell Washington, Cornell Powell. I think probably 3 of them will be on there, especially for scout team purposes. Baylor Cup, I think I've been talking about for months. Herb Smith Jr., veteran-wise, I think, if he wants that opportunity, I think that would be good. Chu Godric, we'll see what happens there because, I mean, part of that, as you talked about in the earlier show, factors in probably with Luis Rees-Zammit potentially being able to get 17, in that regard. And then Neil Farrell and Fabian Lovett. I want to see Lovett no matter what. Neil Farrell, I think, makes a lot of sense if they need help there. Truman Jones, I mean, they didn't put him on, I don't remember an injury designation for him, so I could see him on practice squad. Obviously, Curtis Jacobs, Cole Christensen, and Sweezy Bozeman are all. Christensen's a veteran, so you would count on the veteran part of it. Keith Taylor and Kamal Haddon, I could totally see on there. And then Deion Bush would be a veteran, which I fully expect Deion Bush to be on there tomorrow. And then DJ Miller is a possibility. So, I mean, I named off 22 guys. There's only 16 spots available and potentially 17th, I think, Matt, if they do the international designation. But so, I mean, we'll see it happens because a lot of those guys have to clear waivers, and some teams may not let them clear waivers. And so that's why I try to give a ton of options so people can just mentally see those names and think, okay, well, that person went to this team. So so then who's next in line? So I try to do it in a specific order on my Twitter account that showcases it to where you can kind of just go down the line. But there are some guys that are going to be that make clear waivers from other teams that I wouldn't be stunned if the Chiefs are interested in too.
Yeah, and I during our break, I went back and looked at the international player pathway rules again, and the only thing I can really come to the conclusion, Nick, is that the NFL and the powers that be never prepared for the possibility of a team having 2 international player pathway players, because there's detailed rules about what happens at the roster cut down, as far as your international pathway player, what happens to them. If they're placed on waivers, then obviously they're just traded like any other player. Any team can claim them and put them on their 53, and then after that, they're basically just treated like a regular player. If they clear waivers, and we're talking about this case just exclusively Chu Godric. If Chu Godric were to clear waivers, the Chiefs then have the option to sign him to the practice squad and use the exemption on him. If they do that, then all the protections that go with the international player pathway exemption apply, which is that no team can poach them off the practice squad, but also the Chiefs can't sign them to, or can sign them to their 53. So the only thing that Chu Godric, if he were to be signed back to the practice squad, would be eligible for would be to be on the Chiefs practice squad. He could be elevated just like a player can be for a practice squad elevation, but cannot be signed to the 53. So there are some limitations there just about how that player can be used. You get to protect them from being stolen from you, but at the same time, you can't bring them up for the season. So you're basically committing them to essentially a redshirt year with some practice squad elevations. If you decline the exemption on them and decline to sign them to, if you just sign them to the regular practice squad, do they become a regular practice squad member? With all the regular rules, meaning they could be poached if you don't put the exemption on them. If the team chooses not to sign that player to the practice squad, they become a regular free agent, regular player. No other team can put the international exemption on Chu Godric this year. That's exclusively available only to the Chiefs. That's where it gets complicated because there's no nothing in any of the rules that I've read and descriptions about how the international player pathway programs are dealt with that allows or acknowledges the idea that a team might use the regular season exemption on a player who was different than the off-season exemption. There's just no explanation for it. I've asked people with the Chiefs, I've asked people with the NFL what the rule is, and everybody just kind of shrugs their head because nobody knows for sure. I'll be interested if the Chiefs do inquire about putting the exemption on Louis Rees-Zammit, if that might just be something that the NFL is going to have to rule on, and maybe Roger Goodell is going to just have to say whether or not it's possible. They also may just say, no, it's not. It's True Godrick's exemption. You can use it on him and nobody else. I think there's also a possibility that the Chiefs don't have an interest in putting the international exemption on Louis Rees-Zammit. That if they were to sign to the practice squad, I'm not sure that they would even want the limitations of that. I think they might want the possibility of bringing him up to the 53 at some point if they feel like he's developed. I don't know if they want the limitation on that. I think the other part of it too, honestly, I mean, we don't know. There could have been a tacit agreement that the Chiefs wouldn't use the exemption on Louis Rees-Zammit. I mean, there's other possibilities that maybe we haven't considered. And I'm not going to speculate beyond that. I'm not even trying to speculate on that's a possibility. I'm just acknowledging there could be factors that we're just not aware of. So right now, it's True Godrick's exemption. And until the Chiefs pass on that one, it's not going to go to anybody else. So that's step one. We'll see what happens. But I don't think it's going to apply to anyone else. So I think you were talking about the practice squad, Nick, and I know you rattled off there. Anything else about the running back breakdown? What happened today surprise you at all, or is it just let's move on to receivers?
No, I'm curious to see if the Chiefs will add somebody in there to be the fourth running back, and if they do that, then we'll see if they do something. Because the only spot I could potentially see is if there's somebody along the offensive line that they potentially waive, and so taking somebody from the offensive line would be the only way if they're going to add a running back. They're going to have to keep 7 receivers, in my opinion, because the Hollywood Browns injury right now. Otherwise, I think that room might be a little bit different. I think they're going to keep 4 tight ends for a little bit. Otherwise, they didn't have to trade. They wouldn't have traded for him if they didn't want 4 tight ends for the initial handful of weeks. And then D-line wise, once Cameron Thomas, they'll be at 9 in that regard. But he technically wasn't on the roster earlier. I mean, the Chiefs admitted, the Chiefs have in their news release that they traded for him, but he wasn't on the initial roster listing yet. And that's just probably a thing where you're probably pulling his bio over from wherever else you have to on that website we were on.
Yeah, initially both the players who were traded for were not appearing on there, and then one appeared, and so I think it was just a clerical issue.
Yeah. So
maybe even a computer issue.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they'll end up keeping the cornerback and safety position the way it is. So yeah, I mean, from running back wise, I mean, I could see them adding one more, but you're really limited on the spots you may be able to, if you had to. I think the 3 guys that potentially would kind of, maybe not necessarily locked in would be CJ Hansen, Malik Herring, and I'd say it's probably just those 2 potentially if the Chiefs do need to add somebody somewhere else.
Yeah. Before we just move off running backs completely, Jesus has a question. I'm interested to see what you think. Do you see the Louis Rees-Zammit signing as a mistake?
No, it's not a mistake at all. Because here's the thing: it created national interest, international. It created national interest. It created international interest, and it got the Chiefs brand to kind of be seen overseas. So, like for a lot of people, when I harken back to the '90s. Something Carl Peterson always did was he signed a local kid from either somewhere that went to high school in Kansas City or somebody that was one of the local colleges. For example, one year it was Brian Shea from Emporia State. Another year it was J.J. Smith, who he either went to Raytown or Raytown South. but JJ, you rooted for them. And then there was another year where from Mid American Nazarene, it was John Booth. But each year, Carl did a good job of adding a local interest feature story that made the area root for the local hometown kid to potentially be able to make the Chiefs roster. So for that aspect of it, the Chiefs kind of did this on an international scale to where the rugby community was probably rooting for him to make it, and then his hometown, his home area, and then his parents when they were family was up in the stands for that game. That was a cool sight to see. So all that combined, it didn't create anything bad for him. The Chiefs didn't waste a roster spot. They didn't waste any time. He got the opportunity to live out a dream, and we'll see what happens in terms of if he clears waivers and they sign him to the practice squad, or if another team picks him up and he gets to potentially continue that dream. There's enough athletic ability there that it was always going to take this full year for him to just learn the NFL game. Learn the NFL, trying to learn the NFL game and learn the NFL playbook, doing that all in 1 year when you've never done it before, that's a whole different ball game that a lot of people were overestimating. So, we'll see how it transpires. But I mean, like, I don't think his story is over yet, personally.
That's what I think is the key, is that I think it's an incomplete. It's not over yet. So let's see what happens if he ends up on the practice squad. If this is the end of Louis Rees-Zammit's career in Kansas City, hey, it was a fun, nice experiment. If he goes on to somewhere else, goes on to do something else, no, I mean, no harm was done. I mean, I do think that I don't think that he really took away from anything else. I mean, obviously Carson Steele was able to develop and emerge. It wasn't like Louis Rees-Zammit's work at running back blocked him in any way. I don't think there's any downside to it whatsoever. And the international exposure for building the Chiefs brand, I'm sure that they love it. I mean, I'm sure it hasn't been anything but a positive. So, yeah, I don't think it's a mistake at all, and I don't think that the story is over. So let's see what happens from here.
As they say in that one song, the rest is still unwritten.
Exactly. Well played. Wide receiver, not a surprise for me, especially after the Juju signing on Monday. Chiefs keep 7 wide receivers with Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, and Juju. Obviously, Kadarius Toney, Justin Ross, Nico Remigio among those waived today. Like I said, no surprises to me, Nick. Any surprises to you at wide receiver?
No, once Juju Smith-Schuster got signed, you knew that was going to either cost Justin Ross or Nico Remigio a spot. Like that's where that was going to go. Because once Juju's on that roster, like, okay, Juju kind of moves into the number 4 spot with Hollywood, Rice, Worthy, if they're at full strength. And then Watson fills in spots and is on special teams for probably a handful of snaps. Then McColl's kind of your returner. Sky's kind of a returner, but Sky can fill in another spot too. So Sky and Watson take over kind of some of those fill-in roles. McColl works on the special teams portion, and then also can kind of back up Worthy to a certain extent. And Juju can back up Hollywood Brown and Rice if he, in my opinion, if he needs to in those spots. So they gave themselves a backup at pretty much any of the 3 key positions that they needed.
Yeah, the return roles are going to be interesting to me because I think we look at the way that this roster ended up. I mean, for the kick return role, yeah, I think McCole Hardman, Sky Moore, and Carson Steele are your top 3 choices. And considering that the Chiefs are going to have 2 guys back there, I think most, if not all of the time, there's a scenario where you can only choose 1 back there, but I don't think a lot of teams are going to do that. But those 3 that trio is probably your 2 to choose from. So we'll see. If there's any differences there. Punt return, Nick, I mean, the Chiefs have been listing Xavier Worthy as their number 1 punt returner. And he didn't necessarily get a ton of looks in training camp and none really at all in the preseason. But, I mean, all indications are that I've received is that it certainly looks like that the Chiefs are going to have Xavier Worthy be the number 1 punt return. Doesn't mean he's going to return them all. And I assume that if he's not returning a punt, that it's going to be McCole Hardman. But that's it, really. I mean, is there anyone else that you really see in this group that's got return capabilities?
From a return perspective, Carson Steele, I could see being on their kick return in some capacity. back there like he was during preseason. McCole Hardman, I think, is going to potentially be a returner. As you said, Xavier Worthy, I see, is a returner. Sky Moore is a potential returner, but he's going to be like your fourth in that regard. He hasn't done it a ton, but a guy who can sneakily do it is Trent McDuffie. Like Trent McDuffie's been able to do it before, and he could if he had to. I don't anticipate them trying to force it, but yeah, I mean he's another guy that can. So I mean they have 5 right now, and look, I mean, depending on what happens, Jamal Agnew, what type of attention he gets and how he looks coming off a broken leg. He's a veteran free agent out there right now. That's one of the fastest returners in the game. And if the Chiefs did potentially need to swap out, whether it be McCole or Sky for Jamal Agnew, they could, but both those guys know the scheme a lot better to where, you know, I don't know where you're pulling that number from in terms of roster. So I think there's only 3 spots that really the Chiefs would potentially be able to kind of move around if they need to. And so I think they're going to be limited in terms of what additions they would make to 53.
I think you're right there. Before we go on to tight end, I do want to say, Luttrell, thank you for the super chat, for the contribution there. That is tremendously kind of you. Always appreciate the super chats and want to recognize them. And I did that to you silently earlier, but I wanted to do it out loud for everybody. That was very appreciative. Thank you very much. And tight end.
Someone gets to the bottom of here, and he can answer it in the comment section. Is it Luttrell or Luttrell? That's
Great
what I've always
question.
wondered.
Great question.
Feel free to tell us: is it better 1 or 2?
I call you Luttrell because I grew up with someone whose last name was Luttrell, and that's how they spelled it and pronounced it. So if I've been pronouncing it incorrectly the entire time, please correct me, because there's a chance that you only pronounce it that way if you grew up in the Ozarks. So. But tight end, Nick, I thought the Chiefs were going to keep 3 going into the day. I was convinced they were going to keep 3 once they released Irv Smith, but then the trade for Peyton Hendershot, Chiefs end up keeping 4. How does that room break down to you?
Okay, so there you go, Matt. You nailed it.
You can go either way.
That's awesome. I appreciate the versatility there, Luttrell. I'll start calling him Luttrell now.
Well, Luttrell, if that's your last name and you have someone in your family named Robin from the Ozarks, we got connections. So
outstanding, Matt. The L is silent. Oh boy. Comment section's hopping at night. I love it.
They've also had sport coffee, Nick.
If you have, I'm proud of you. Because the French vanilla is what amps me up at Chiefs training camp. That's what I use at Chiefs training camp to wake me up every morning. So I'm not a person that normally gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but there I was during Chiefs training camp doing that. To get back to your tight end thing, yeah, I mean they took a little versatility from themselves by having 4 to where, you know, like you don't have that roster spot at the running back thing if you need it, and then having the 7th receiver right now kind of takes it away too. So yeah, I was mad. I was really surprised that because I mean we had been debating for months. Okay, they're going to keep 4 running backs. Well, if they do that, then they're going to have to keep either 1 less tight end or 1 less receiver, or they're going to keep 9 offensive linemen. But they kept 7 receivers, 4 tight ends, and 10 on O-line. So they essentially took 1 away on defense, and they took 1 away at running back potentially than what had, you know, been debated from time to time. So I don't know. I'm going to dive in further into Peyton's coaches film from last year on a handful of plays and kind of look at those. But I mean, hey, a lot of people that have been down in Dallas, including Justin March, that Justin used to be a linebacker here for the Chiefs. Like he was raving about Hendershot. So I'll go. Didn't have enough time, obviously, so I wanted to jump on the live stream with you because I knew I was like, man, I don't think they're gonna have it anytime soon. I don't want Matt tap dancing for 2 hours on his own. So, and I deliberately saved the coffee just in case that it was going to take that long. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I hear that Peyton Hendershot, I hear, is colorful, which I'm looking forward to because always need more colorful people in the locker room. But yeah, I mean, he's obviously he's a different flavor of tight end than Irv Smith. He's a bigger body. I think that makes a difference. But ultimately, if you're going to have a fourth string tight end, they've got to play special teams, and I think that was obviously the difficult part for Irv Smith, is that he hasn't played special teams exclusive much at all. I mean, since the injury, he played a lot his rookie year, and then after the injury, hasn't really played special teams the last few years. And the Chiefs didn't really try him on special teams. Um, and they're two different sizes. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, the Chiefs now have, I feel like, of their if they're four tight ends, they've got three different flavors. I mean, I think that Wiley and Kelsey are kind of in the same category. I'm not talking about talent wise or performance wise, but just the same type of tight end.
Yeah.
Then Noah Gray's a smaller. I put Irv Smith and Noah Gray in the same category. But Hendershot and Irv Smith are not in the same category at all. We'll see. I mean, I know the word from Dallas is that he's a work in progress as a blocker. I'll be interested when you look at the film to see, if that checks out. But I'm also interested, Nick, about, what was the difference between year one and year two. I know he had the ankle injury last year that slowed him down. Maybe that was it exclusively, but he, put up pretty good numbers, and Dallas was very excited about him as a rookie. To then go to now where they're willing to give him up for a conditional 7th round pick, it's like, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it about the Chiefs that they see in him that they really like him and want to explore it? So, be curious to see what happens from here. Offensive line, this was one of the two stunners for me, although this was stunner number one. Nothing against Ethan Driscoll. I was just really surprised. I didn't think that the Chiefs were ready to give up on Lucas Niang at this point. We really hadn't seen a dramatic shift. If anything, this week in practice, I mean, we saw those two running together on the twos since Wanye Morris has been out, but they seemed, I know I'd never got the sense that Ethan Driscoll had moved ahead of Lucas Niang, at least not significantly. But him to win that spot as the fourth offensive tackle, especially with Wanye dealing with a bone bruise. I mean, you're looking at the prospect, Nick, that, I mean, if that bone bruise of Wanye's is, becomes more significant, or he has a setback, anything of that nature, you're going into week one with Ethan Driscoll as your swing tackle. And that just kind of surprised me. Even though I did not have CJ Hansen on my final 53, Nick, and you and I were talking about it yesterday, I'm going to kick myself forever, because that was my literal last move, was swapping CJ Hansen for Derrick Prince and keeping a fourth running back. If I trusted my gut, I'd have gotten that one right, Nick. But CJ Hansen, I think, is deserving of a spot. Were you a surprise? I know you've really liked Ethan Driscoll, but were you as surprised as I was that he beat out Lucas Niang?
No, and here's one of the where you and I have talked about before, kicking ourselves and everything. I had him on my final 53 before the because I had it ready before the preseason game started, so we'd be able to kind of get it out as soon as it was over. And once the game ended on our air last Thursday night, and so I was kind of hoping, I was like, and I had him on there and everything, but then I saw Niang play where he did, and I'm like, all right, I think they're going to keep Niang just because of experience. But kind of my feelings on Niang. I felt like Niang's collectively continued to get more and more kind of overweight since he got drafted here, and I don't feel like I just feel like he's got some undiscipline in his game that Driscoll doesn't have. Driscoll just needs the reps and experience. So as long as they didn't lose Driscoll, I was going to be good with whatever decision they made on that. But there was so much talent there that they clearly felt he was going to get picked up on waivers, and he has versatility where they've used him at left tackle and right tackle. I think long term, you kind of keep him at that right tackle spot. And then I also kind of thought with Niang, if they kept him, I'm like, hey, they had Niang work some at guard too. So if they needed to in a pinch, like they could put him in a guard spot. So I kind of wonder if they want to get Niang on the practice squad tomorrow if there's an opportunity. But I could see a team. The NFL. This is the last thing I'll say on this part of it. The NFL is a tackle needy team across the league. There's not a lot of good offensive tackles out there, and there's even less promising developmental guys. So it does make sense that Driscoll's there, and it also makes sense that some team may pick up Niang because they're like, hey, he's got experience, he's got a third round pedigree, and you want a bigger body. Like, I think a team that likes to run the ball could pick up Lucas Niang tomorrow and put him on their 53. And somebody asked the question here, because I've got 7 minutes left before I got to get out of here. But yes, I do think that. Somebody asked, yes, if somebody does pick a Chiefs player up off a waiver claim, puts in a waiver claim on them, yes, they have to be on their 53. They go to their 53, and then and then that team's got to waive somebody. So, like, for the Chiefs in 2013, John Dorsey made a waiver claim on almost seven different guys, and then they had to waive or release 7 other players.
That is correct. Yep. It was the second draft of 2013.
Yeah.
Yep. So 26 players on offense. I thought it would be 25 and 25, but 26 has been typical for the Chiefs, so that's not a surprise. They are an offensive-heavy team. And really the spot that's the switch is that, I mean, you could probably say that it is an extra offensive lineman versus defensive lineman. I mean, the Chiefs would, in many cases, keep 10 defensive linemen. I know at one point during the training camp, that was their expectation, that they were going to keep 10. They finished with 9. And I think we talked about this, Nick. I mean, I could be getting my conversation with Ryan Tracy confused afterwards, but so maybe it was Ryan it was even talking about, but 4 defensive tackles right now.
Yeah.
And especially when you've got the Baltimore Ravens coming up in week 1, I'm trying to look at the run defenders on this team, Nick, and I see Mike Pennell, Chris Jones. Who else?
Yeah, Tershawn Wharton's going to have to be a run defender. But no, what they do on the practice squad tomorrow could be some of the call-ups they got to make for that night. Yeah, I mean, Derrick Nottie, as you mentioned on the podcast this week, you gave some exclusive information on 41's the Mic. So if you haven't listened to it, you should check it out there. And if you have, you already know it. So, teaser. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think if they can get Neil Farrell on the practice squad tomorrow to help potentially with run defense and get Fabian Lovett on the practice squad to help long-term with their 3-tech spot or potentially as a 1-tech, like, I think that's gonna be what they're gonna need to do. And they're gonna need Bolton, Leo, Tranquil, and Jaden Hicks and Justin Reed to really be strong in run defense week 1.
Yeah, I mean, and I was pretty surprised at Neil Farrell getting waived, because just a year ago that they traded for him, and I understood last year, the idea that he wasn't, he didn't have training camp with this team, didn't understand the scheme, was just maybe having difficulty fitting in, but with a whole off season that would, make sense. I mean, I guess one side, give credit to Brett Veach that if there was a mistake made, they moved on from the mistake. But I think at the same time, we got to go back and judge that trade, because that trade was a mistake if Neil Farrell is not on this team still.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. Yeah, if you want, I think we only got 2 questions. I think Patrick had a question.
I was gonna say, you got a question you want to talk about? Let's go straight to it.
Well, we'll do that, and I'll give my final thoughts on the roster, and then I'll get out of here. Patrick Stevens at 720. He's one of my buddies from high school and a former high school football teammate.
There you go.
So I'll answer for Patty. I don't know that they're going to add another person onto the active roster right now. I think if they do add a receiver, I think it's for practice squad, because they're going to need a month, if not 2 months, to get up to speed in the playbook and everything before they could potentially do that. So, I mean, I think Sky's kind of locked in for a little bit, and either Sky or McCole would be the guy out if they do add somebody to the practice squad that isn't currently been a part of their system that they want to develop and then put on the active roster at some point. And in terms of final thoughts, I'll give on the linebacker thing. Linebackers, I think the trade for Hendershot, I think that probably cost Curtis Jacobs from a special teams perspective. having somebody that's done that before on special teams, I think probably potentially cost them their sixth linebacker. For me personally, and yeah, cornerback spot. I mean, all of it makes sense. We were just wondering if they were going to have 6 corners and 4 safeties. They end up going 5 and 5, and Chris Roland Wallace, as you mentioned in the earlier stream we did, like he's going to see a lot of times special teams more than likely, and Nick Jones and Naze, they're going to be able to play some special teams too.
Yeah, it's going to be really intriguing to me because we're 9 days away, and Josh Williams and Najee Johnson not practicing this week in a full role. Those are probably your top 2 gunners. If you don't have them, then maybe it is Nick Jones and, and Chris Roland Wallace being your gunners in week 1. You need some guys healthy at corner, and that you just haven't got that yet. Nick, I am extremely grateful for you for all the time that you spent with us today. Thank you so much for everything. Truly appreciate it. Give your niece our best, and just
which
go
one of them?
Your nieces, I guess. Give them our best, and just go be the best Uncle Nick you can be.
Yeah, I don't know about best, but I mean, I'll see all 4 of them here in a minute before they go to bed. All right, yeah.
Take care, my friend. For better or worse, I'll stick with you for a little bit here and go through the rest of the roster and answer any questions that Nick and I haven't gotten a chance to get to yet. On the linebacker side, this was the 5 that I thought it would be. Curtis Jacobs had a very nice camp and a very nice preseason. I think the Chiefs definitely want to get him onto the practice squad. Nick may be right. I mean, maybe the addition of Cam Thomas coming in impacted him, because even though Cam Thomas is light for a defensive end and a little big for a linebacker, he has played special teams. So I could definitely see him playing multiple roles on special teams. I don't know if he's going to necessarily be a 4-phase guy, but there's certainly some teams that he could play on. So let's see how he fits in. But Curtis Jacobs, I would expect to be on the practice squad. If he doesn't end up on the practice squad, I think it's because somebody claimed him for their 53. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think that the general belief and consensus on Jacobs is that he just needs a little bit more seasoning, but I think that would be valuable seasoning for the Chiefs because he seemed to really fit in with this defense and a good player overall to have around. So I think the Chiefs would love to have him back if they can. Cornerback was my other big stunner surprise because Nick Jones had really been battling it with the 3s all throughout training camp and really into the preseason. And it wasn't until really the last week or so that we started to see some movement with him popping up, and a little bit that was injury related because obviously we've talked about Najee Johnson and Josh Williams having the injuries. So, that's kind of led to Nick Jones moving up the depth chart a little bit. But, for a while there, obviously Kelvin Joseph looked like he was going to be maybe the 5th corner. Then Keith Taylor kind of moved into that spot. I certainly had Keith Taylor as my 5th corner. That's who I thought it was going to be. And I didn't think the Chiefs would keep a 6th. And it certainly looked like that the Chiefs favored probably a 5th safety over a 6th corner. That proved to be correct. I was just really surprised who the 5th corner ended up being. Thought Taylor had a chance. Joseph had a chance at one point. I think Taylor obviously became the favorite. What really shifted it to Nick Jones? I've got to assume that it's probably a little bit of special teams. I think that the Chiefs do favor Jones on special teams, and there's a couple of these spots. I mean, we're talking about linebacker. We're talking about. Well, I think I'll put both linebacker into that because Jack Cochran and Cam Jones are both strong special teams players. Your 4th tight end is now a strong special teams player. You've got that. Hey, a little bit of that receiver, although McCole Hardman and Sky Moore, I mean, they're returners, but they're not necessarily 4-phase special teamers. They're really just the one element special teamers. You're a little light on special teams outside of Carson Steele at running back. So maybe that's where you do go for a little bit more of importance at corner and safety for your special teams. Nick Jones is definitely a special teams player first. So maybe that was the deciding factor there. I still think that this is a position that the Chiefs will look for more bodies. So I would not be surprised if one of a couple of scenarios happens. One, that you see some corners that clear waivers, joined him on the practice squad. Wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs put in a waiver claim on a corner or two to see if they can get them. Wouldn't be surprised if somebody went through waivers and maybe they signed somebody. I mean, it's always a possibility. And there's, I haven't seen the complete list of players who just were released outright. I haven't heard a name yet, at least at corner, that would jump out at me. The Chiefs only had 4 of those players that are just straight released and don't go to waivers. We talked about that in the earlier live stream. That there's 4 veterans, so Matt Dickerson, Cole Christensen at linebacker, Deion Bush at safety, and Irv Smith were the 4 players that were veterans the Chiefs released that don't go through waivers. They are automatically free agents and free to sign with anyone. That also gives the Chiefs a better chance of getting them onto the practice squad if they want. And I would think Deion Bush would be one of those. Cole Christensen's an excellent chance that he might be one of those couple of special teams players that they love to have. Matt Dickerson may very well be that as well too. I think there's a good possibility. Irv Smith, I don't know. The Chiefs might be ready to just move on, and I think they've got younger options at tight end. Still, it wouldn't be a stunner. You can only have 6 veterans with unlimited experience on the practice squad, so you would start to hit a little bit of a ceiling there, where you may have to make some choices. But I think Irv Smith would probably be the 4th priority in that list, but we'll see what happens. That was a pretty good bolt of lightning there and thunder. I don't know if you all are having the storms in the different parts of the Chiefs kingdom, but that was a pretty good rattler right there. But Nick Jones surprised me. I mean, the others didn't, but with Nazi and Josh battling injuries right now, that's an area that I think if you're the Chiefs, you definitely need to shore up before week 1, whether it's by adding a body onto the 53 or maybe even just a couple of bodies on the practice squad. So safety wasn't a surprise to me. I saw the Chris Roland Wallace move coming really the last 7 to 10 days. And hey, I would not have had Chris Roland Wallace on my final 53 projection if I had, done it Friday after the game on Thursday. I wanted to be able to see practice and how players, responded, to get the last input from the coaches. And there was absolutely no doubt to me from watching practice on Monday and Tuesday that Chris Roland Wallace was on this team. He suddenly was playing on every special teams, every starter on special teams. He was getting some reps with the ones. He was playing a lot of slot. He was looking a lot like he was playing a lot of Chamari Connor roles. I mean, he was really kind of mimicking Chamari Connor a lot. And he's a college corner with 5 years of experience in college at Arizona and USC. Big college. I mean, it's a little bit surprising. I mean, I know that Nick and I think about this earlier. He's another one of those tweeners that, that maybe teams just thought wasn't big enough to be a safety, too big to be an effective corner. But Chiefs like those kind of guys. I mean, they like those kind of players. And, Chamari Connor's one of those types of players. I think they feel like this is another one of them. So they've got a corner that they've converted to safety that can still play a little corner if they need it. So it really was evident the last couple of days to me that he was making the 53. So I'm glad that my eyesight did not let me down, but I was convinced that he was making it, and Deion Bush wasn't, just based on practice the last few days. It was clear that after the final preseason game that he'd clinched that spot. Obviously specialist, no surprise there. James Winchester back at practice this weekend, healthy, so doesn't look like he should have any limitations on that shoulder going into week 1 against the Ravens. If anybody else has any more questions, fire away. I'm going to start back up at the top, and anything that I skipped over for just because we were just kind of hitting some of the position questions, I'm going to go back for some big questions, big topics here, and just a little lightning round. Chris, what unit do you think is the weakest link on this roster? I'd probably bristle just a little bit at weakest link because I don't think that I don't know if there's a group on this roster that I would say, hey, this is the group that could let the Chiefs down. This is the reason why that they could not win the Super Bowl this year. I think the defensive line group is, to me, the most questionable right now. They're lacking depth at defensive tackle. Doesn't appear that they're still 100%, in love with the depth that they have at defensive end. Yes, they're going to get Charles and Minihue back, but is that enough? I think they would like another run defender up front. I think they'd like some bulk up there. They definitely need another tackle up front. So I don't think they're done. I mean, I don't think Cam Thomas was the one move that they felt like that they needed. I think it's the one room that if they hit the panic button at any point, that's the room that I could see. That maybe it's in week 6, maybe it's later, maybe it's earlier. If there's one group that I can see them saying, hey, you know what, at the trade deadline, you need to beef up, I'm guessing it's the defensive line. But injuries can always impact that. It could end up happening somewhere else. Dez, will the DBs that are injured be ready for week 1? Great question. And we haven't had it. We did not get an update from Andy Reid this week since he did not speak. We will talk to Andy Reid on Friday. Friday is basically Monday. So for those of you who are obviously familiar with the Chiefs' usual schedule, Monday is when Andy Reid speaks to the reporters. Typically on Zoom, occasionally in person, but it's going to be in Zoom this week on Friday at noon. We'll get our first injury report from him that day. The first injury report of the season doesn't come out until Sunday, and then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday will be practice days. Injury reports will come out that day, and we'll really get our insight into this. It certainly seemed like with Najee Johnson and Josh Williams that they were being fairly precautionary and just letting some other guys get some work. Hey, if you want to read anything to it, I mean, Josh Williams had a helmet all day today. Didn't play any team periods, but he certainly looked like he wanted to. Nazi, to me, it did not look like he went through really anything. I did not see him with a helmet. Looked like maybe he did some conditioning and everything, and he was on the field. So I think the Chiefs would have listed him as if today was an injury report, I think it would have been limited. The fact that they're out there in some form is a good sign. They're not completely shut down. They are practicing in a limited role. So I would say they're trending. It certainly looks like they're trending for week 1. Whether they're both ready, Najee obviously has some rust to knock off. So if one of them didn't play in week 1, Najee would be my bet. But I'm not ruling out either one of them being back. And we really haven't gotten a solid update from Andy or the team on where they are injury report wise. Sharon, Driscoll versus Niang. Nick talked about it, and I don't disagree a lot. I mean, yeah, here's the tough thing. The other thing I'll say about Niang, and I say this as a fellow patella tendon rupture patient, like Niang is. I feel for those players that go through that because I've had it happen twice. I know how difficult a procedure it is. It's a lot more difficult than an ACL or anything else that you can get with a knee. And unfortunately, I know the numbers, and the numbers are that players just typically don't last long after patella tendon surgery, and they very rarely come back to the player that they were. I salute Lucas for working as hard as he did to get back to where he did to be with this team last year. Hey, he does, like Nick said, I think he looks a little bigger, a little slower than he did in the past. Chiefs tested him at guard a little bit. Could that be moving inside and maybe being a guard be his future? Maybe so. Maybe a team will pick him up with the intention of trying to do that. But those patella tendons or surgeries are just career wreckers. And like I said, I salute him for coming back as far as he did, but I think it's a victory to get as far as he did. But the numbers just don't favor players coming back from those injuries. Having long careers is my recollection. I think that it's like 2.3 years is the average for a player coming off a patella tendon that they last. And I mean, Lucas is right about that. So, I mean, he's kind of meeting the odds. If he were to play this season, he'd defy the odds. So I think that's great. I mean, I'm proud of him, but it hurts. I mean, there's no doubt that's a difficult injury to come back from and be yourself. Does Driscoll play only left tackle? No, I've seen him at right tackle as well. He's gone back and forth, so definitely has right-left flexibility. I think right now, obviously, you would be more comfortable with him on the right side. Doesn't mean that if he had to go in to play at left tackle, they wouldn't plug him there. I could also, I mean, if Kingsley went down, I could also see them moving Juwan Taylor to left and putting Driscoll at right. Chiefs typically don't like to do that. They like to keep guys where they are, but I don't think they would have any fear putting, if they're keeping Driscoll on the roster, I don't think they have any fear putting him at either spot, and he can play both left and right. So I've got no concerns about that. Love all the clone jokes about me being over on RGR at the same time. I never know for sure when Ryan's are posting those. Sometimes it ends up happening at the same time. Yes, I have a lateral. I have a twin. I like the Gallagher and Gallagher 2 references is a deep cut. I do appreciate that. Gabo, who do you think is what is the most underrated room of this 53? I mean, I'm gonna I'm gonna go out and say it. I mean, I don't think I'm gonna curse it, but I'm cautiously optimistic about the wide receiver room. I mean, it's a lot of talent in that group. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it outperforms expectations because I think Hollywood, when he gets back, and as long as this injury doesn't knock him back too far, Hollywood should have a good year. I mean, is it going to be 1,000-yard receiver? I'd bet against it just because I think there's a lot of footballs to go around to a lot of different receivers. I think Sam McDowell at the Kansas City Stars made a great point, which is that, carrying 7 receivers might be a mistake. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily a chemistry issue. I think it might be just getting players into rhythm issue more than anything. I think Mahomes can work with just about anybody, but I think receivers are just like any other players. I mean, I think they need to play in order to get into a rhythm, and it's hard to go out there and catch, make catches and make plays if you're only getting 6 snaps a game. You need work, and it's hard to get 7 receivers a bunch of work. I see why the Chiefs are doing it because, they've got a lot of different styles of receivers. I think they want some depth and they feel like they've got some talent there. So if you feel like you've got talent, I think that this receiver room is different than last year. Like I said, I mean, last year, I made this point earlier, so I don't want to berate it too much or beat it into the ground too much, but Sky Moore was a starter on this team last year. McCole Hardman, had he been here in week 1, would have probably been a starter on this team. Now those guys are 6 and 7. I mean, that tells you a lot about this depth. And, not only is Hollywood a really good receiver, Rashee Rice is obviously a really good receiver. I'm banking on Xavier Worthy being a really good receiver. I mean, I think he's going to be a lot better down the road, and I think the Chiefs are going to protect him a little bit and they don't have to throw him into the deep end this year. They can use him a lot like they did Tyreek as a rookie, and Tyreek had a 500-yard season. That'd be a great year for Xavier Worthy. I think Juju's capable of giving them whatever they need. I mean, if they need a 500-yard season out of Juju, I think they can get it. It might be more than he can hope for, as essentially call it a number 4, number 5. I mean, I think obviously Juju is a better receiver than Justin Watson. Justin Watson may receive more snaps simply because the Chiefs are comfortable with him at all 3 spots, and he's kind of a go-to glue guy, complimentary guy. Whereas, even with coming back into the offense, there's going to be an adjustment for Juju. This is year 3 for Justin, so he's just more prepared. Maybe it'll end up being pretty close, but hey, you've got some guys to rotate through there. If you get some injuries, I think you're going to be okay. If you had to give Hollywood an extra week or 2, I don't think it's the end of the world. So I think this receiver room is going to be better than expected. So, hey, yes, your mileage may vary. Hey, Zeus, can the defense get more interceptions this season? Well, they only had 8 last year, Jesus, so you certainly hope that they can. They need to. At some point, Trent McDuffie should turn into an interception machine. I mean, he's just been so close. I got to think at some point he's going to start, turning some of these close plays into interceptions. But they need other groups to, help out too. And that's one thing that with Nick Bolton with his elbow, I think he had a couple of lost interceptions last year because of the wrist injury. Basically was playing with one hand, and trying to make an interception with one hand's impossible. Whether that elbow hurts him as much this year, I mean, hey, he makes 1 or 2 plays, and suddenly you feel like his team's getting some more turnovers. I think more than anything, they just need to get that vibe. If they can have a game, Jesus, where they just get a bunch of turnovers, I mean, I feel like that's something that can help them get more turnovers. That's just what they kind of need, is maybe um, just a big game that gets some output and gets some confidence as far as getting the ball away. I mean, and obviously with Trent McDuffie, not being an interception machine, but he is a fumble machine. He's a hard hitter. I think they've got a couple of guys that will fit in that category. I think Jaden Hicks is going to create some turnovers, whether it's fumbles or interceptions. I don't know if I necessarily saw a lot more turnover capability in this group than last year as far as the defensive backs go, but a lot of it does go hand in hand with the line up front. I mean, and if they can continue to get pressure, and obviously my concerns about the defensive line, can they replicate being the number 2 team in the league in sacks again this year? It's going to be a challenge. I don't know they can do that. If they can, then they should make things difficult for some teams and should get some turnovers. But I mean, they should get more than 8 interceptions like they had last year. If they don't, that's a challenge. That's going to be something they've got to overcome. I'm just not. I mean, if I put the number at 8.5, I don't know if I would even touch that. I don't know if I'd bet the over. I mean, I'm not certain that I see the one player on this team that I can say, okay, well, that guy's going to give you at least 4 or 5 interceptions and get you a pretty good chunk. Then they just haven't had the guy yet to establish themselves as that. Maybe somebody will this year, but even when the Chiefs are concerned about who their number 2 and number 3 corners are, it's hard to bet on them, having a breakout year interception wise. Let's see. I know we had a few more questions come in. Oh, hey, Jesus with the second one. How many sacks will Karlaftis need to break the bank? I tell you what, man, I think 12 is probably a magic number. I mean, maybe double digits, period. But I think if Karlaftis gets 12 sacks, then I think, the Chiefs, their decision to try and lock him up long-term starting in January, I mean, that'll obviously be the first opportunity that they can try and lock up him and Trent McDuffie. Yeah, I get, they've got the 5th-year option for both those guys, but, what you generally want to do is you want to try and lock those players up as quickly as you can. And, yeah, to me, I mean, 12, I think, is my magic number for Karlaftis. 11.5 is a good number. I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but if you got the crooked numbers in double digits, then that's when I think the Chiefs would certainly have to say, wait a minute, we need to pony up the money and pay this guy. And same thing with Trent McDuffie. I mean, Trent McDuffie, gets 6 interceptions, finely tuned. How do we know McDuffie could catch the ball on a return, 0 interceptions? That's changing topics here, but I almost added this when Nick said that McDuffie could go back on returns, because Dave Tobis told us before when we asked him last year, and I think even the year before, who was the best punt return guy on the team. He's said on several occasions that it's Trent McDuffie. And it's just that he doesn't have the ability to use him because he's a starter on defense and they don't want to take a risk or anything of that nature with McDuffie. And obviously, he's been playing defense, so he's tired. They don't want to put a tired Trent McDuffie that's just come off the field after a drive back to receive a punt. But Dave Tobe has always said that if they felt like they were in a place where all they simply had to do was just send somebody back there to catch the ball and down and fair catch it, that Trent McDuffie would be their guy. So I can only tell you what Dave Tobe has said. So that's why he's got the reputation that Trent McDuffie does. Is I kind of think of it as the Seinfeld "I choose not to run" reputation, because Trent McDuffie, the fact that he never gets asked to return punts, and if Dave Tobe just says he's the best return guy that they have, we kind of just have to believe it because we don't have any evidence to the contrary. So. Finely tuned. What are the chances Hollywood makes week 1? And do they go to 6 wide receivers when he does? It's possible. I mean, maybe they are just keeping around the depth for now until Hollywood gets back. I would be very surprised if Hollywood plays week 1. If he does, then I think it's because he's really worked his butt off to get back. This is obviously an important game to him. He wants to play against the Ravens. There's no doubt about it. But that's typically a 4 to 6 week injury. He wouldn't even be at 4 weeks yet in week 1. So I think that's a tall ask to get him to come back early. And you're playing for the long haul. You're not playing for week 1. If you're the Chiefs, you're playing for the long haul. I honestly, I probably would, keep him on ice until at least week 3. at least consider it. Week 2 might be the earliest that he could logistically come back, but if I'm the Chiefs, don't rush it. Take your time with him. Make sure he's right. There is no hurry to get Hollywood back. So I think it's pretty unlikely he plays in week 1, maybe 50-50 in week 2, gets higher than that in week 3. But as far as going to 6 wide receivers, I think it's just going to depend how they play. I mean, if anyone struggles, anybody has any issues, if they're playing with 6 receivers, everybody should get chances, especially and with the return situations. Sky and McColl should get chances there. So if they don't perform in special teams, that could be a problem. And it'll be interesting if one of the receivers right now being Juju. I mean, will Juju be active in week 1, or will they give him a bit more time to acclimate himself? He kind of hedged his bets a little bit when asked about that today, about whether he expected to play in week 1 or not. So I could certainly see that him maybe not playing in week 1, in which case that's just another chance for the other 5 to prove themselves, and also the chance that, hey, if one of them stumbles, maybe when a roster spot is needed, maybe they will drop down to 6. So it's football. I mean, you gotta perform. Des, what is the practice schedule from now until game 1? Chiefs, they are off essentially for the next few days. Like I said earlier, Sunday is kind of Monday this week. So they do a little bit differently, but with the CBA rules and everything, Chiefs they're technically off tomorrow, but what they do have is the kickoff luncheon. They get together, take the buses down to the kickoff luncheon held by the Chamber of Commerce. So they have that tomorrow afternoon. Thursday is really and Friday, and I understand that Thursday, Friday, Saturday are pretty much completely off days. There may be some meetings that they do have to come in for. There might be a walkthrough in there, but no formal practices, nothing padded, anything like that. But then Sunday is when the practice week starts. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday will be their regular practice week. So Sunday will be like a Wednesday practice, Monday is a Thursday practice, and Tuesday is a Friday practice. So Sunday and Monday will be longer practices, probably at least in pads, at least one of those days, I would assume. Probably certainly Thursday. The question would be if they have spiders and shells on Wednesday. Thursday will be the heavier practice. Monday will be the heavier practice. Tuesday, your 10-10-10 run through like they normally do. So we're basically in week 1 now, Des. I mean, it's kind of a dead period for a couple of days, and then once they get to this weekend is when it really picks up for game week, and just like a regular week, just on a Thursday. Joe, will Chiefs re-sign Pacheco after the rookie contract? I mean, it's down the ways a little bit. I mean, I guess we'll just see what the value is and what the production is. I mean, has Pacheco put himself in line for a big deal? I'm not sure that the evidence is there. And, with the, I mean, we're going to see how Carson Steele does. The Chiefs didn't really put have not normally, at least since Clyde, except for Clyde, really haven't put a lot of draft resources into the running back spot. I mean, right now we're at a spot where, we're looking at a 7th rounder and an undrafted guy being their top 2 running backs. Probably going to have maybe another undrafted guy in the practice squad behind them. I mean, it's the running back position in the NFL. And I certainly think that with the other money contracts that the Chiefs are giving out, I don't see how they're ever going to pay a running back in this era, at least in the Mahomes era. I mean, unless they get the guy, unless they get another Kareem Hunt that comes through the door, I don't know how you can pay a running back in this age and this time of the NFL with this roster, because you gotta go cheap somewhere, and running back's the one place where you can. Cody, how did you tear your patella tendons? Was it football related? I wish it were football related. Technically, they were baseball related, Cody. I was a catcher growing up, and catching ruined my knees. So I had I was diagnosed with subluxation in both of my patellas, which is the patella tendon gets strong enough that it pulls the kneecap kind of out of place. It just goes so strong that it just kind of pulls it and gets overused. After my first patella tendon rupture, I read that people who were athletes who were diagnosed with, and I don't know if I can really consider myself an athlete. It's not like I played college baseball or anything, but catching will do it to your knees. But I read that it was something ridiculous statistic, like 75% of athletes with subluxated patellas went on to rupture their patella tendons within like 20 years. And after I ruptured my first one, I'm like, I'm going to rupture the other one. I ruptured the other one almost 10 years apart. Both of them occurred slipping on ice. Once was shoveling snow. The second time was just walking in the driveway. I hit a patch of black ice and went under me, and knee went one way and leg went the rest of the way. So I wish it were an exciting story, Cody. I literally slipped on ice. So yeah. Patrick, now that the 53 is set, does free agent signing make sense? If so, do you have a name in mind? I still get zero sense that the Chiefs are interested in any big name free agents. I mean, these trades were a pretty good example of that. Talking about two players on rookie contracts with a couple of years left that are very affordable. I'm looking at the NFLPA report. I mean, the Chiefs have a decent amount of salary cap space. I mean, they got 17.1 on the current report, and that's including, 91, all 91 contracts. Excuse me, that's actually reporting only 53. The top 51, excuse me. Top 51 contracts are being counted right now on that report. It won't be until after this run through, after everything happens the next couple of days, that it will now start counting, and that report's going to generate and tell you all the contracts. So that 17.1, you include roughly another $4 million for a practice squad. You've got a couple of guys on, your non-football injury list. One's got a decent contract, one doesn't. One's, Charles Minnie, who's already being counted on that. BJ Thompson, he's never probably is included on that, but you got those guys in the replacements that you got to count for. So, you got two extra roster spots there. You've got the practice squad that you're going to have, and then you need some money to navigate, just to deal with injuries that come up down the road. And once again, I mean, the Chiefs, Brett Veach wants to spend some of that, if not most of that salary cap savings from this year. He wants to spend on his own free agents, and they've still got a couple of guys to get done. They've got, Nick Bolton, they got Trey Smith. They've got the money to get those contracts done, and they'd rather do that than spend it on a veteran for this season. So, no, I would be very surprised. Like I said, I think it's emergency spending money that if the Chiefs get into midseason, they get to the trade deadline, and suddenly they've got a spot where, that they've got a deficiency, that they got a hole. That's where I could see them maybe saying, okay, we're going to spend some of that money on a trade. We're going to spend some of that money right now. But otherwise, no, I think that you can bank on the Chiefs looking for affordable options at everywhere they go. I don't think they're going to go out and just spend $5 million on, like I said, a veteran or anything of that nature. I mean, I think they want to save money. They want to put the money that they have into keeping their own players. That's the strategy. So, I think I see one more set of question marks. Brian, so we cut every good receiver from the Bears except Hardman. Washington was looking good, like Jay Watt used to. I may be getting lost there. Maybe the long day, Brian, but I wouldn't. I see Des saying Monty Bailey in the practice squad would not surprise me. Obviously, got to pass through waivers tomorrow, but I wouldn't be surprised that he does. So that would make sense. Cody, oh yes, he says as soon as he had catcher in baseball, I knew where you were going with the subluxation. Yes. Yeah, I joke sometimes every once in a while that letting kids play catcher is probably a form of child abuse. It's not really, but there's no doubt catching ruined my knees. But hey, thanks everyone for popping in and watching this tonight, especially if you came for both of them. You came for the rain delay. this afternoon while we all waited for the roster to come out, and then coming back tonight for the breakdown. Thanks so much to Nick, as always, for joining me. I hope you all can find a partner and a friend and a colleague like Nick, because Nick will do anything for you, even on his day off, helping me out here. So he's one of a kind. Everybody, thank you for the questions. Luttrell, the super chat, thank you very much. Steve, being a new member, love that, appreciate that. As always, hit the bell so you get notifications about how whenever we go live, any of our new videos, when 41 is the mic comes out. You'll also get videos from the locker room during the season, so make sure you hit that bell, subscribe. If you can become a member, even better. You can help make sure that the coverage here at Chiefs Digest goes on, and hopefully can always do more. Go over, if you haven't already, obviously subscribe to the 41 is the Mic podcast. If you do subscribe to it, give us a 5-star review. That helps other people discover the podcast. So, and we're closing in on 6,000, subs here on the Chiefs Digest channel on YouTube. I mean, considering I think I was under 100, I'm sure I was under 100 a year ago, August 29th, when I did my first live stream. I'm blown away at how far we've come. So couldn't be here without all of you, and truly appreciate it. Oh, I see Michael. One more thing, Michael, I have no idea how this NFL thing works. I'm Welsh and keen to understand what's going on with LRZ. Does he have to find a new team, or is he just not going to make it in the NFL? Michael, I don't think this experiment is over, and I still think it's an experiment. I mean, what he's trying to do is incredibly difficult. I think it's also incredibly amazing. From what I have seen of Louis Rees-Zammit over the last few months, I think he's an incredible athlete. His hand-eye coordination is amazing. When I saw what he did at the this is not even football related, but when I saw what he did at that celebrity softball game, and after telling us that he's never played softball before, and I'm pretty sure he's probably played some rounders, sure he's played some cricket, but rounders probably in PE back in the day in Wales, I'm sure he did. But he went to the plate in that softball game and swung at the first pitch and looked like exactly what he said. Just never played softball before. And his sixth pitch, he hit over the fence. That's just ridiculous. That just doesn't happen. You only can do that if you've got incredible strength, incredible hand-eye coordination, incredible reflexes, just athleticism. That's amazing. So, and I've seen him just progress so much since that rookie mini camp when he first got on the field with the Chiefs to now. I mean, I know there's more. This is incredibly difficult. I mean, he's going up against people who've been playing football at the light end, for the guys who are like the least developed, maybe like 6 years, if these are guys who, played like maybe a year of high school and then go into college. I mean, at worst, he's going up against kids who've been playing since they're 5 years old. He's going up against people who are so dramatically more experienced than he is. What he's been able to do so far is incredibly impressive, and I think he's got more in him. He just needs more time, more seasoning. So what happens here with the Chiefs? What they waived him, players who don't have enough experience in the NFL, who haven't accumulated enough years in the league. What happens when they go on waivers is that any other team in the league can claim them. They just have to put them then on their active 53-man roster. I don't think that's going to happen in this case, just because he is inexperienced. The one thing that I think he would be most comfortable with is returning kicks. He's obviously been good at that. I think he would be comfortable at that. But I don't think another team is going to claim him. If no one claims him, then he can sign with the practice squad of any team in the league. And, we're talking a lot about the 53-player roster, but teams can also have 16 players on their practice squad. And the Chiefs will absolutely, I mean, if he clears waivers, he will end up on the Chiefs practice squad unless he chooses not to. And I would imagine he would choose to be on the Chiefs. It's too good of a spot to be. So he doesn't have to necessarily find a new team. He still may make it in the NFL. I hope he chooses to continue to pursue this. I hope this is, for him, it's not considered a setback that makes him want to, leave. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to talking to him in the locker room, Michael, because we don't get to talk to the players really one-on-one much at all, if at all, during training camp, because there's no really open period. We just get to talk to the players when they bring them to a podium for a press conference. Once the season starts, we get to talk to them in the locker room, and I'm really jazzed to talk to him because there's a lot of things about Wales and Welsh comedians and actors and actresses and things like that I want to talk to him and about TV shows. So I don't even know if he watches anything, but I got some questions that I need Lewis to answer for me. So let's see if there's anything. I think that's about it. I mean, Brian, the UDFA kid was intriguing too. Yeah, I mean, hey, Chiefs have 3 undrafted free agents who made this team. I mean, that's impressive for 3 undrafted rookies to make the team, for a Super Bowl 2-time defending Super Bowl champion. It says a lot about them. So, and yeah, you're right, Michael. It's a night and day sport, but there's there's enough crossovers that I understand it. And yes, he's been teaching his teammates slang. I know a little bit of it, so I'm looking forward to seeing if there's anything else that Lewis can teach me. Maybe I'll understand a few more British comedies and TV shows on a whole new level now after getting some instructions from Lewis. So everybody, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it, and sticking with us for all 3+ hours of the live stream today. Had a lot of fun. We'll always do this. We've got the 41 is the Mic podcast coming up on Sunday. We will be doing that after practice, after media availabilities, probably late afternoon, early evening. So you'll be able to get updates from Nick and I on everything that happens on Sunday, which will include talking to Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and I believe even Travis Kelce is going to be on the podium on Sunday. So it is going to be a full day of fun and a lot of things to talk about. And then obviously Tuesday, we will be back on the usual weekly Q&A for the live stream, which will be after 3 days of practices. So feel free to stop in then and bring a load of questions, because we'll have a lot of information to share and things to talk about. So everybody, thanks again for the support. Thanks again for coming in and visiting with us all today. Thanks for the questions, the feedback, the comments. Again, anything you want, anything that didn't get answered, anything you want to share, put it on the YouTube channel. I always read them eventually. So got a couple of days coming off here of some lighter activity, so I'm going to catch up on my YouTube comment reading. Everybody, thank you very much. Have a great week, and we will catch up next